Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Stone Genius Podcast. My name's Ro. I'm the Stone Genius. You know me. I'm often stoned. I'm always a genius. Today I'm super excited. This is a guest. We'll get more into why I have such so admire this guest and everything. I used to, if I was going to introduce this person, I would introduce them as an award-winning playwright, but now I think I also have to add a best-selling author to your title. Welcome to the program, Stephen Dolginoff. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Hey, Ro, it's so good to talk to you. It's so great to hear you, and I'm so happy to be here.
I am so glad that you're here. So I'm going to give a little background for some longtime listeners followed over. So I originally had a show called The Roro Show. And one of my very early guests, I think you were probably second or third guest that I had.
I think so.
And I'll tell you this, afterwards, and I had actually written down this note. I wasn't going to get to it till later because you have more important things in your life to talk about. But I mean, so afterwards, you gave me a compliment just on how it went and things like that. And you really, I think that was the first time I was like, oh, someone else has validated that I can do something that I really enjoy doing. And so I really, and you probably don't know what an effect it had on me. So then we go back. So you and I changed that for the Roro Show. So then it was the Roro Show with Stephen. Then we did, I believe, 29 episodes, and you needed to step away for some things that were going on, and we may get to that. And so then I started the Stone Genius Podcast. So I've now done, between the show we did, this show, and then the longest one night stand that I do with my wife, Bobby, I've done over 400 shows, and I don't think I'm not sure I would have continued. This is a lot of hard work. I think about you a lot and the kind words you said so early on to me that made me, because I enjoy this. I mean, I wouldn't have spent the last 12 hours all night up trying to garner questions and do things, and not just for this, but from other interviews, when I just have to go to a 9 to 5 every day and it just kills me. So I wanted to say thank you very much.
You are very welcome. You are very welcome. It's well deserved. I spoke the truth, and 400 shows later, it looks like I was right, huh?
You were. So thank you very much. And that goes to show that often you have no idea how just a simple kind. I mean, you probably didn't even think. I mean, I believe that you're being truthful, but you were like, hey, that was a fun hour or whatever. But it impacted me so much. So if you ever feel, and this goes to everyone listening, so that you know, Stephen, we are now heard in 43 countries. 43 countries. And so if you ever feel like you should say a nice word to someone, err on doing it. Don't say,
Yes.
I mean, go out of your way and do it, because you never know what type of impact it can make to them, just for that day, for that week, for that month, for that year, whatever. So thank you, Stephen, for that. Hold on. I get a sound for this. We need to get back to this whole, you're an Amazon award best-selling author now. What's this all about?
Well, I am a writer and composer, as you know, but if your listeners don't, I wrote a little musical called Thrill Me, the Leopold and Loeb story. And I started working on it 30 years ago. And it became a small hit in New York, but a huge hit worldwide. And it was first produced about 20 years ago. It took me 10 years to get it produced in the first place. And it has been a daily journey of success with this musical that's not a household name. It's not like Wicked or The Phantom of the Opera or something everyone's heard of. It's sort of a cult hit in Europe, but it's a very mainstream hit in Asia. And I have had such an exciting adventure from the moment I got the idea, sitting in the very apartment that I'm sitting in right now talking to you, back in 1994, started writing it, up until this very day that I decided, for the 30th anniversary of the day I started writing it, which was Also, the same year, 2024, is the 100th anniversary of the incident that inspired it. Leopold and Loeb, or two young guys that committed a murder in 1924.
Right.
With those two events converging, I decided that I would do something that I swore I would never do, because I'd been asked to write a book many times, and I said there's just no way I would do it. But with those two things happening, I kind of thought, if
How
not
long
now,
ago
then
was
when?
that? How many years ago was that you figured out that the 30th and the 100th year were going to be in synchronicity? And so, I mean, was that the
It,
catalyst then? Because you've been asked to write a book a lot. So was
yeah.
that finally like, oh, these two things cross? I might as well. It makes sense.
Yes, it sort of came to me last summer, early last summer, when I started toying with it, and I really thought this is the time, this is the reason to do it. So many things have happened with the musical, and I think that going into the future, it's sort of going to just be more of the same. So I don't feel like, oh, if I just wait 2 more years, maybe this will happen, or maybe it'll be a more interesting story. No, it's already a very interesting story. So I decided to go ahead and do it. And it took me, about 6 weeks to write a very loose, rough draft, and about 6 months to fully refine it. And it was published. It came out officially on February 6th, just a little over a week ago, and it's already an Amazon bestseller in its category. Let me just make that clear, in theater and biographies, and in Broadway and musicals.
Hey,
You know,
Stephen,
and
let me let you in on something real quick. So
Sure.
when I play golf, if I want to shoot a 71 that day, I will shoot a
Hmm.
71 that day. I quit whenever I get to 71. If that's 18 holes, that's great. If it's 9 holes, that's great. If it's 13 holes, when I get to 71, I quit, because no one asked me how many holes did I play. Oh, you played golf today?
Right.
What did? So here's what I'm saying to you. No one's going to ask you, oh, what category? You can just leave that part out, because no one's. I don't think anyone will
You know,
follow up that.
that's a good tip.
Okay.
That's a very good tip. I will remember that. Thank you.
I
But
also
for
want
your
to.
but for your listeners, we're gonna give them the facts.
Right.
But it's
So,
still a major accomplishment, and I was shocked. I couldn't believe the response. Uh, but as I said, it's a globally known show, and so it's sells all around the world.
right. So,
And
what originally drew you to the story? Because as a someone that is member of high IQ societies, these
mhm,
these two gentlemen, young men, whatever they were, 19, I think, at the time that they committed their
yes,
crime.
right,
They were very high IQ. In fact, I think one of them
yes,
at a time was, or is still considered, one of the highest IQs ever recorded. I know that there's a lot of debating
I
on
think
that,
that's
the
true.
IQs and
Hmm.
things. But what originally drew you to the story of the two of them?
Well, it's really a fascinating
Well,
way that I got there, and I write about it a lot in the book.
and I was going to say,
I
if at any point you need to say, well, they need to buy or download the book to find that out,
well,
feel more than free to say that to me and the
well,
audience.
I would. Well, I'll give you this little taste, but I highly
Okay.
recommend buying the book. It's called Thrill Maker, and it's available on Amazon, on just about any book website. It's paperback only, paperback and hardback. It's not available yet as an ebook, but that'll probably
Okay.
happen down the line.
And
Um,
the
but
whole
so I,
title, hold on, the whole title is Thrill Maker: The Story of My Musical Thrill Me, correct?
correct, that's the
Okay, I
full
just so
title.
that's the whole title. I don't know if you I don't know what else is out there. So I just want so the whole
Sure.
title is Thrill Maker: The Story of My Musical Thrill Me.
That's right.
Okay.
So in 1994, and it's so funny, this is something that I put in the book. The only reason that I remember that this was 1994 was because I found some of my original notes, and I had written the date 1994 on the top. That because while there were like word processors and computers, there wasn't anything like an online calendar,
Right.
and I didn't keep like a journal. So I would have had no way of knowing that date if I hadn't
I'm not
happened to
even
write
sure Palm
the
Pilots were
year.
a thing then.
I don't even, God only knows. But I had a couple very small musicals done in New York, and I was looking to do my next piece, and I wanted to write something very small to make it easy to produce
Right.
and for make it very attractive to producers and be simple. I knew that I would probably have to put up staged readings of it myself, and I wanted to make sure it would be as simple as possible. So I knew I wanted two people, and I wanted it to be about a relationship between two people. I didn't know what that meant. It could have been a father and a son,
Right.
a man and his wife, anything, two guys, anything. That idea was sort of brewing. And I had a second idea that would be just a true crime story, a true crime musical.
Everyone loves those.
Exactly. So those were what I was working with. And one day I went up the street to a bookstore that I used to go to frequently, and I went to the true crime section, not because I was specifically looking to find the idea that day or anything like that.
Right.
But I found a big book. It was like an encyclopedia of famous American criminals. And I started thumbing through it. I came across the section about Leopold and Loeb, and I had heard of them. I didn't know much about them, but it was at least, something that I recognized.
Right.
And I read this 4 or 5 page synopsis of who they were, what their crime was, and what the aftermath was. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks that it was a 2-person story of a relationship and a true crime story all in one. And I pretty much went home and started working on it. And it has never not been a part of my life since then. There were times when I had to put it away for a while because it took 9 years for it to be produced. It had to go into the drawer,
Right.
but it was always on my mind. And I knew that if some producer would be brave enough to produce it someday, because the guys are in a sexual relationship with each other, they kill a little kid just for the thrill of it.
Right.
It's some dark stuff, but it's also very psychological and very about the human condition and about what we do when we're in relationships. And I thought it would be a compelling story, and I was right. and I knew that if it was just produced once, it would be successful as it could be.
So
I never imagined it would be this successful.
I want to stop you there because I can't go too long without the focus being shifted back to me. So I just wanted to say that I understand that feeling, and I don't know if everyone does. Like this podcast, so I've joked that I could go to where I work. I do my daily sales thing that gets me on my insurance, blah, blah, yada, yada. And I've told Bobby I've wanted to go in there and say, hey, wouldn't you love an employee that worked, never looked at the clock? They put in so much extra effort. They came up with all these ideas on their own. They never faced an obstacle they couldn't do. Wouldn't you love that employee? And they would be like, yeah, are you going to become him? I want to say I already am that person. It's just in my podcast. Because sometimes something clicks and you're just so... because I've kind of shelved this podcast and things for a while, like haven't done episode just because I find it challenging, unmotivated. So I get that. And it's so weird because I have told the story of when I met Bobby hundreds of times, probably on this podcast, and it's always the same. And that was 28 years ago, just a couple of weeks from us recording this. And
happy anniversary.
Thank you. So I understand being in that bookstore and remembering, it's funny because you remember it's 5 pages. Sometimes when I hear people like, oh, this was really impactful. And I was like 13, 14, 15. I'm like, well, it was impactful. Wouldn't you know your exact age? So I love that you're like, it was like 5 pages and I read it and it just spoke to me. And it's always been a part of my life since then, because for those of you out there listening that have never had something that impactful, it's awesome. I highly recommend it, but it's something I don't think you can make it. I'm not sure you can manifest it. You were looking for inspiration, but not necessarily right at that moment. So that is so cool. So,
and it's crazy because I just have to put in that there was only one copy of this book on the shelf. If someone had bought that book, that the day before, I don't know that I ever would have come across this story. I mean, even though it was a story that was out there, the stars just had to align at that right moment for me,
You
and
know,
it changed my whole life.
so here's my thing. I've talked about this on the podcast as well. I know that there's a God, a creator, there's a universe, there's a guy running my simulation. There is something. There is no way that else that Bobby and I meet each other. But I'm also
Right.
100% convinced that we would have met each other. Now, one of our big
Hmm.
deals was we were 7 years apart. So she was 21 when we met. So it's not like I could have met her too much earlier. Then we get into the
Right.
creepy
Right.
stuff. But I think that if it wouldn't see, I don't think there's any way you wouldn't have been in that spot on that day. That was whatever's going on in the universe. That was everything converging that placed you at that point. And I don't know why. I can't explain it. There's so many weird
No, I
things
know what
that
you
do
mean.
that, but that is so amazing because when something changes your life and you remember, I bet you could probably even remember where you were standing in the bookstore, the
Oh,
orient,
yes.
all of that. And most people don't have that. I mean, and so that's awesome to hear. Sorry to interrupt. I
Oh,
just I just
no,
wanted
it's
to
okay.
gush in about that because it is cool to hear that.
Yeah, and the bookstore is long gone. It became a
There's
clothing
probably
store, and
there's
then
probably a certain number of my listeners that are like, what's a
bookstore.
bookstore? Yeah, so it
Well, and one of the most interesting things is where the bookstore, on the site of where the bookstore was, a clothing store opened, and just by total coincidence, that is where the costumes for, or at least some of the costumes for the very first production of Thrill Me were acquired from the on hallowed ground, so to speak.
The only way that could have been better is if you would have said it turned into a theater and that's where you had your first
Oh,
performance. But
oh, that would have been nice.
that's an amazing story. I mean, and that's what the listeners love to hear. They love to hear the things where, especially, well, listeners on here, because you got all those stoners that are like, oh, that's cool. And then you got all the geniuses that overthink everything anyway. But, being able to hear how everything came together for you. So you kind of shelved it for 9 years. It's come back and out. When did you know? What was the first performance?
Mhm.
When did you know, wow, this is something big?
Well, really, on the night that it was performed, the first night it was in front of a real audience, there was a lot of development. I wrote it in '94, and probably through about 1999, I was working on it. I did some other projects too, but there were readings, there were all kinds of other very interesting stories that are in the
Right.
book that I know everyone will want to read. But it took a long time. Finally, it was the night of the very first performance in front of an audience that wasn't an invited audience of friends
Right.
and industry people like for a reading. So rehearsals I had thought went very well. I was very pleased with how it was looking. And it was directed by the man who created the musical Annie, as in The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow, Annie.
Right.
And it was very big news in the industry that the man who created Annie was now directing a show about a child who gets murdered or about the murderers of that child. So
Right.
it brought us a lot of publicity. And he was very difficult to work with,
So hold
which I
on.
don't shy
Did
away
you
from in the
know?
book.
Did you have any? Was that brought to your attention after you hired him, or was that something that you're like, oh, did a child murder? And like, did you tie that in before? Did someone else, and then you got some press or something? Someone else identify that
Well, it's kind of a long story as to how
in the
he
book?
became part of the project. It's in the book, but I of
Thrill
course knew who he
Maker, the
was. He
story
was
of my
very
musical,
famous.
Thrill Me. I'm just gonna keep saying
Yes,
the title of your book.
yes, by Stephen Dolginoff. Yes.
Yes.
So no, I knew who he was. He had a long reputation in the business, so it was exciting that he was directing it. And it was just done in a very small little theater as part of the theater festival. So, like I said, I knew that it was going well, and I knew that I was pleased. But the night that it was performed for an audience, it was exactly what I had imagined at that point 9 years earlier. When I sat down in 1994, the first thing I thought about was, what do I want this show to feel like? And the first image I got was of the audience. I imagined an audience sitting on the edge of their seats, hands covering their eyes, mouths agape, not applauding, not moving, just hypnotized by it. And that's exactly what happened. Exactly. I was looking around and I thought, this came true. Forget the show. It's the audience that I couldn't believe. And
Right.
then when it ended, it was like an ovation like I'd never heard in my life. And and as I say in the book, I didn't care if there was ever another performance. Like I was that satisfied. I thought this is what I dreamed of, and I got it. So, we're going to do it again tomorrow night, and
Right.
several more times. But I was perfectly happy, and because I felt very not vindicated, but because no one ever said it wouldn't happen, but I just felt very satisfied. I thought this is exactly what I wanted, and from then on, it's never been out of pre-production or production somewhere in the world since 2003. I'm in negotiations almost every week for something new. I mean, something landed on my desk yesterday, a streaming deal for the Czech Republic production that would be on like a Czech Republic version of Netflix.
Wow.
It's just out of the clear blue sky, just
Right.
out of thin air, just boom. And I get things like that happening all the time. There's going to be a big production opening in Mexico City this summer, and they're doing a big casting, and they asked me to record a video to play before the auditions to welcome the actors auditioning. I've never been asked to do that before. So,
Well, I was
I
gonna.
put that one on my list.
So, do you think that is that something you want to be a part of, being a part of that selection process for them, or does that make you? I mean, does that give you, since it's the first time it's happened to you, does that give you any qualms? Like, how about if now I've selected, now it's all on me for picking those people?
No, I mean, and I won't be picking them. It's just merely they want to make it really special. And they think that it'll be a very big deal if the author from America, from New York,
Right.
is recorded an introductory video. It's more important for me that they have the actors that they want,
Right.
because I don't know the standard there. I'm not going to be there. It's much more important that any production does it the way they want, within reason, of course. And boy, there's some stories that are not good stories that are in the book. But for the most part, it's been close to 250 productions now, and it's those initial productions that I was involved with. It had to be done my way because it was setting the tone, and it was.
And you were acting in those early productions, correct?
Well,
Or not?
again, another good story. I had to take over one of the roles when the show moved to off Broadway. It started in a little theater in New York, then it had a few productions around the country and in Australia, and then a big, like, off Broadway is not Broadway, but there's sort of big off Broadway and small off Broadway.
Right.
And this was big off Broadway. And, I'm not going to give the story away because it's really good in the book, but I ended up having to take over the larger of the two roles and play it myself, which was never my plan. You remember me in high school. I was an actor and I wanted to be an actor, but
Yeah.
I gave that up really fast when I went to college and I went to NYU. I very quickly decided, no, it's a writer that I want to be. So I never even gave it a second thought, but it was one of those situations where I sort of had to fill in and do it. And
You know
so
what's
much happened
weird
because
is
I did it.
as you're saying this, and I'm thinking back to high school and things, and you wanted to be an actor. So we had a radio and television class back then, if you remember.
Mhm.
And
Yes, I do.
I just made this correlation while you were talking about, how you wanted to be an actor. That's what you knew you wanted to be. I had a lot of people telling me that I had the voice for radio. And I always thought it was, I have the voice for radio. Instead of, because now that I do the podcast, a lot of people tell me, well, that I have a voice.
You do.
Not like a voice like the tone, but what I talk about, what I bring to the table, whoever. And so, I may have wasted these past, we don't have to exactly tell how long ago we graduated, but
No.
30 plus years. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird because you always knew. And it's because
did.
now I feel like I know. Like I told my wife, I go, this is what pisses me off about podcasting is that I have to have this other job so that I can have insurance so I can do my podcast, where I just feel like if I could just have that extra 40 hours, man, that'd be really
But
nice.
that's today.
It
Who
is.
knows what tomorrow is going to
It
bring?
is.
You keep doing what you're doing, and who knows what can happen.
So
I mean,
I,
you are so good at this, and like you do have a voice. Not only do you have the voice metaphorically speaking, but you have the voice literally speaking too. I would not be surprised if I'm, you know, not, turning on a major podcast network or if you become the next Jon Stewart or I don't know. I
well,
wouldn't be surprised.
I appreciate that. And my thing is, I've been having to narrow the focus. And as I have
Hmm.
found, it's lucky. When I interview people, I have been lucky enough to get, they go, oh, you should interview this person, or this person listened to our interview and they would
Hmm.
like to interview you. And I'm also bold enough that I it takes me about 30 seconds before I drop my podcast because I'm always interested, and I'll
Right.
drop it if it's someone that's interesting to see, like, hey, what's
Right.
your, oh, you're an attorney, oh, you're an EMS, oh, you're a playwright. I will talk to anyone about anything because I love to learn. So
Right.
we were talking about, or you had mentioned earlier that your play Thrill Me is more popular overseas than it is here in America. What is there a reason? Do you know why that reason is really?
I wish I knew exactly, but
Okay,
here is my thought. It in America, in the United States, in Western countries, there's a lot of plays, there's a lot of musicals, there's a
right.
lot of cities, there's a lot
True,
of states, and there's a lot of competition.
true.
It's less so in other places. In Asia, starting in South Korea, which the Thrill Me's been playing there now for 17 years. When a South Korean producer happened to be in New York scouting a Broadway show that was also represented by my agent, who represented that show and Thrill Me, and was told that that show isn't available, someone else has the rights for South Korea. Well, why don't you go to see Thrill Me?
Right,
That producer really enjoyed Thrill Me, but it was nothing like anything that had been done in South Korea, at least mainstream. It's a small, dark musical.
right,
They didn't have small, dark musicals. They would get Phantom of the Opera or The Lion King or, the big Broadway
right.
shows, the famous shows, Korean shows. So this was something very different. Now, small, dark shows were, dime a dozen here. That wasn't breaking any new ground. But over there it was. And it became an overnight hit. But in a big mainstream way, not their version of off Broadway, but their version of Broadway. And it took off like wildfire there. And I think it's because, for the most part, and I believe this is still true today, over in South Korea, Seoul, uh, there's less of a tradition of theater, so the audiences are a lot younger and mostly female. So in an audience full of 20-ish year old females watching the story of two, I would say, very handsome men who are lovers and commit this spooky crime. And I think it just really connected.
And
Really connected. They loved it.
I will tell you, with that time period, they're very stylish as well, which helps.
Very,
Yeah,
very. Yes,
yeah,
the 1920s.
yeah.
So they look really snazzy, and it's all very tasteful and just beautifully produced.
So
And I
what
think
I'm
that's
hearing,
why.
hold on, what I'm hearing is if you're a
Mhm.
single guy in one of these countries, a good place to meet young women might be at the play Thrill Me.
Uh, or yes, Thrill Me or just about any theater, because
Or if you
when
had a
I went,
date, take them to it.
yes, I went to see Thrill Me in Seoul for the opening of their third year. And I think I went to several performances. I was one of maybe three males in the audience at any
Really?
performance, you know, maybe three or four. Now in Tokyo, where the show was brought, it's been playing there off and on for about 11 years now. It's still mostly female, but it's more of a mixed audience, and it plays there by a production company that produces a lot of shows, and they do it seasonally. For the first 3 years, it played a big season every year, like a big chunk of the year.
Right.
Now they do it every other year. And then it premiered in Shanghai in 2016 and has been running off and on there ever since. It's about to open there later this year in an English language production in Shanghai, which is going to be very interesting because it's only ever been there in Mandarin.
Right.
But they feel that the demand is so strong that a lot of the fans of the show will appreciate the opportunity to see what it's like in English.
Right.
And movies, theater, books, everything has to be censored there.
And
But my understanding is the English language version won't have to be censored nearly to the extent of the Chinese translation.
The native language there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not so in any other place, only in China.
I had written down when you were talking about that, how many different versions, meaning, like you had said that you had gone to Tokyo and seen, I think, multiple nights. But how many, so let's just count that as one. How many different versions, productions of your plays have you seen? Follow up, how many countries does that entail?
I had to count this for the book. I have either been involved with, so I saw like the first few productions and then was in the off-Broadway production, and then I did the role several other times in other theaters. And then counting those and then the productions that I traveled to see, I would say about 25 out of the 250.
Okay.
Countries would be the United States, South Korea, London, and Japan.
Okay.
So I've been to 4 countries to see it. The show has been done in, I believe it's 25 countries and 17 different languages.
So has there been issues in translations at all, or has that gone fairly smoothly, or that's not even your purview? It's like, oh, you want it's your language, you're going to you'll figure this out or know whether it can be figured out.
It's basically like what you just said.
Okay.
What happens when a producer from another country wants to license the show? They're responsible to create the translation. I don't have translated versions to give out. I've only got it in English. So, for example, there have been several versions in Spanish, but there's no official Spanish version that they get. Everyone has to make their own Spanish translation.
Right.
But it's what can sometimes happen is an author can request what's called a backwards translation. So they translate it, and then now you can do it on Google Translate, but back in the day, it would mean a person would have to then translate it backwards, back into English, just verbatim. And then the author would look at that verbatim backwards translation and approve it or not. I don't like to do any of that because if they are paying me for the rights to the show, they have a vested interest in making the show the best it possibly can be.
Right.
And they know their language and I don't. Right. So I just trust that they are going to do what they need to do to make it as good as possible. I never want them to just translate it directly if a joke is going to make no sense.
Right.
I don't want it to just be, well, this is the word for that, so that's the word we're using. I want them to adapt it within reason if they need to. And the only exception is China. And the government is very, picky about certain things. And sometimes things have to be censored and then recensored and then recensored again. And it's at a point where I'm not exactly sure. It looks the same. Like I see videos and I see pictures and it looks just like Thrill Me, but I'm not exactly sure what they're saying. And I understand it's not exactly what I wrote, but it's everyone's treated the same. It's not just Thrill Me, it's everybody.
Right.
So that's how the translations work.
So while you were speaking, because you mentioned Google Translate, I wrote down AI. Have you included or do you use AI in any part of what you currently do with the show? Or if you were doing a show now, would you utilize AI to come up with ideas, or is that cheating?
For me, at my age, I personally feel for me it would be cheating.
Right.
But I know that we're about to enter a whole new world, and I wouldn't, if a writer chose to do that, I don't necessarily know. I mean, if you just can't figure out the best way to say something and ChatGPT or some other AI service can like spit it out for you in a more coherent sentence, I don't think that's cheating. You got a thesaurus, you got a dictionary, you can Google facts that you didn't know. But for me, I would never do it. It's so funny when I first was telling people that I was doing the book, someone said, "Well, are you going to use AI?" And I thought, well, it's not going to know what was going on in my mind.
Right.
It doesn't know what my trip to Tokyo
Oh, you might be surprised, Stephen.
Well, it knows what Thrill Me is.
Oh,
and,
it knows.
I can ask, and I can ask ChatGPT, write a bio for Stephen Dolginoff, and it'll do it, and it knows everything. But just the bare facts. Like,
Right.
if I said, what happened when I went to London to see Thrill Me in 2011, doesn't know that. So no, I didn't. I use no AI.
Okay.
But
I wanted to ask you
yeah,
about this because I mentioned this. So so on January 6, 2021, which was not a great day in the United States, I was actually going out of town. So early that morning, and I was going to Colorado. Bobby always says you need to finish that sentence. I was going out of town to Colorado. I was going to Denver for a smoking weekend. Or a smoking week. And so I had put on January 6th that hey, I'm going to be away from Facebook for a while. See you when I get back or something, which was not a good day to do that with everything that happened in DC.
Yeah.
So I really don't ever post any. I sometimes the show gets posted on there, but I still go out there and I'm a voyeur. Right. So I see everything when you do your posting, when you had your release party and all these great things. I see this. But you know what I also see? A lot of swag that you get from all these productions.
Yes, I do.
So I need to ask you, how much swag? So first of all, swag is, why don't you, for some people, because this may be a term that for our international listeners, they may not understand exactly what I mean by swag. So what you and I are talking about swag, how much have you gotten? What's the nicest piece you've gotten and what's the weirdest piece you've gotten? I know that's a lot, but go.
Sure. Well, there are two different things. There is swag and there is merch.
Okay.
Swag is usually like free stuff and premiums and stuff that like only the cast and crew gets.
Okay.
And merch is merchandise, stuff that is sold at the theater that then they contractually have to send me samples of.
Yeah. See, thank you for making that clarification. Because see, I wasn't even. I was just thinking everything.
And I get both. And I get a lot of both. So this year, or in 2023, the production in Tokyo, they made little stuffed toys, like little stuffed dolls, like a stuffed animal, but not an animal, a person, of the two characters.
Right.
And I just was so excited that I wrote to the producer and I said, I would really like to have more than my, contractually obligated, you have to get more of everything.
Right.
And I now have.
So you have that in an actual contract that you
yes.
Okay. Good to know. Cool.
So like magnets, pins,
right.
mugs, little play sets, but these sort of stuffed toys, I now have a gigantic box. I've probably got, I don't know, 50 of each, and they take up my entire closet. I'm going to have to get a storage locker for it. Tote bags, sweatshirts that look like when it opens, one of the characters is in a prison uniform. And so this year they made hoodies that are replicas of that prison uniform.
Oh my.
And I've got tons of those. I have got incense burners branded with Thrill Me written in Korean. I have got keychains, like mystery bag, like blind box keychains where, there's like 9 different ones, but right. It's blind and you don't know what you're going to get. Well, wanting to make sure that I got at least one of everything, they just sent me a box of like, I don't know, 50 maybe.
So did you get one of everything?
I got one of everything.
Good.
Um, Other things that are sort of inspired by props from the show, like matchboxes and oh gosh, I don't even know. They used USB drives. They used to do USB drives, post-it notes,
Right.
keychains, just everything. And it's mostly in Japan where they do that. In South Korea, they do more subtle merchandise, beautiful program books. They call them brochures. We would call them a program or a playbill.
Right.
But not only do they do those, which is like about the show, but because the actors are always so popular, and even though there's only two characters in the show, in Korea and in the other Asian countries, they usually have 3 to 5 rotating casts. So there might be 10 actors
Right.
that rotate in and out of the roles. So in South Korea, they make a book that looks like, I don't know, like it's a copy of Vogue, and it's just glamour photos of the guys.
Wow.
In like it look like it's GQ or something.
Right.
And so and they're very thick, and they send me a huge stack, and I've got those. It's endless. I write a lot about it in the book too,
So,
because it's a lot of
what's the strangest thing? Because things like incense burners, I wouldn't have unless one is used in the play. I'm like incense burner. That seems
no,
odd. For
no
so what's
disposable
this?
cameras. Disposable cameras with throw me branding. I have no idea what that means. Oh, binoculars, like opera glasses,
I can kind
branded
of
with
see
throw
that.
me.
I mean,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least they could use it for the show. The
yeah,
incense
yeah.
burner. I mean, actually, someone like me, a stoner, they could use an incense burner.
And
So
then, yeah, and not only a burner, but like the incense sticks too. Just, I think that's in South Korea, and I think it's because they like more refined things. So, like
right.
a beautiful incense kit branded with Thrill Me, a cashmere scarf with a little tag that says Thrill Me on it, things like that. Um,
So they're almost buying it
Makeup
more
cases.
because they need an incense burner, but I need an incense burner right now, and I was at this play and I enjoy this play. So it's more like a
I
need instead of buying it because it's branded like this. Now I got to figure out when I'm going to use an incense burner.
I wish I had a concrete answer for you
Okay.
because I don't, but that's just, that's what it is. I don't know if like fans of like anime and manga and things from Japan, Tokyo is sort of famous for these vending machines. They look like what we knew as gumball machines
Right.
growing up, and you put money or whatever, and you turn the little dial, and in a sort of a plastic ball, you get a prize. Those are all over Japan, all over Tokyo. They are very popular. I go to Comic-Con in New York, and they have them there too. Well, in the lobby of Thrill Me in Japan one year, they had a whole set of those. There's vending machines that gave out like pinback buttons of the different Thrill Me characters, and you would have to collect them all. It's a whole industry over there.
So is their merch and swag totally different than what you would see at American productions?
It's a lot more elaborate.
Okay.
We have it here. We have it here on Broadway, but it's usually mugs, T-shirts, keychains, pins, um, a copy of the script, a poster. And they have all of that, but they go a million steps further,
So are these
especially. And then
Are the stuffed I almost said animals. The actors, the those stuffed characters, are those your favorite then?
those are my favorite. My second favorite is, and this is from Japan, China in I think 2021 did little figure dolls, kind of like a Funko Pop, but more realistic looking. There's a toy called a Funko Soda, where it's like a little plastic figure.
Right.
They look like those. They did figures of those, and I also have a giant box of those. So anything that's sort of doll-like, where they've actually created the characters, it makes me think back to two things. 1994, when I first had this idea, and not only was the play successful, but there's toys now.
Right.
There's toys. And it makes me think back to when I was a little boy and a high school student that you knew, just dreaming of having a life in theater. And I just can't believe it, that people are buying dolls,
Right.
toys, stuffed animals, I mean, a mug is one thing, but a doll, I mean, it's
Right.
crazy. And it's just, it's all very exciting, and I have, I have way too much of it.
I need to go out so that because people can get lazy. I need to go out and grab your first interview, which would be interesting. The difference between us talking now and us talking, because, like I
Yeah.
say, it was probably my third time, my second or third interview.
Hmm.
But people need to listen to that as well because it's a great story about high school. So we delved a little bit more on that initial one of
Right.
our relationship. So we knew each other in high school. You were in theater, I was in sports. I remember taking one theater class,
Right.
um, and
That's how we
that's
met.
yeah, and that's all I remember that, and it was down under the library. But it was a great story and a great time to
Right.
talk. But I mean, I
Hmm.
remember when you were because I keep track. I not keep track, but I do. I register when something's going on in someone's life that I has been in my orbit at some time. So I was very aware of you, and that's why when I started my very first podcast, you were one of the very first people. Because I actually thought that was a coup. I was like, "Do you? I have an award-winning playwright on my show, and this is my third show." And hold on, I got a sound for that. Yeah. There they go. Crowd going crazy. But I mean,
Yeah.
it you I it still amazes me, and it is that you were so focused in high school
I
that
was.
yeah, that you're like this is what I want to do.
I wasn't there in high school. My mind was two steps into the future in
Right.
high school. I was already in New York when I was in high school, literally,
Right.
especially my senior year. I took my first trip literally to New York when I was 16, so I guess I was a sophomore. And so that was, well, I'm not going to say the year. So so I was a sophomore, and then what I always say is, and I never came back.
Right.
My body physically came back, and I did shows at Shawnee Mission South, or we went to high school in Kansas City. I was there. I had to do my classes. I had to graduate, but I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I was here.
Right.
I was already planning everything, and it did. And that's the other thing. And this is what's a very important thing in my book. It did not happen overnight. I was almost 40 before I was able to make my living 100% as a playwright, and live only off of the royalties
Right.
and the fees that I get for my plays. It didn't happen like that.
Right.
It took a while, but
It
once it
does.
happened, it was a rolling dream.
And that's amazing because you have to have that perseverance to push through
Yes.
and get through that. And if you do, so one thing that I had learned when I was doing some research just about podcasts in general, that
Hmm.
it's something like 11% of podcasts only have one episode ever, and I think 20 is either 24 or 26% have three episodes or less in their entire
Hmm.
catalog. And this
Wow,
particular catalog now has 300. And I have amazing guests from
that's
all,
amazing.
all over, and I have you. And I know that we've reached. I've reached out a couple times. I know that you've been super busy. So
Oh,
I'm so glad hold on. I got to use this again. You had said to me at one point leading up to this that getting through that you would never write another book again, and you said you may not
yes.
even read another book again. So what was what was the most difficult thing, or what is the thing that just says nope, not doing that again?
Bearing my soul,
Okay.
bearing my soul, bearing my vulnerability, telling the stories that hurt and that were hurtful. There's
Right.
not many, but it wasn't all a bed of roses.
Right.
And I, because I'm kind of a private person, and I like to have my public face and my private face. And I knew that if this memoir because it's really it's my story of Thrill Me. Like
Right.
I wasn't there in Belgium when they did their version. I know nothing about it. This is about what I experienced over 30 years. So I knew it would have to be pretty much warts and all, and it was very different for me and a very different thing for me to have to do. But
Right.
again, like I was about to say, I didn't have to do that, but it would have been a lousy book. It just would have
Right.
been it would have been look at all the cherries and the roses. Um,
So did that
so
help
that
you
was
be
difficult.
did that help you grow and be more like as that being a challenge to open like that? Did you find that in any part of your life like, oh, that I grew a little, I can be a little bit more open even if it's only with my certain close inner circle or something, or did you just like, nope, that sucked, not doing that again?
uh, that.
Okay.
But the other thing is, you don't want to hurt people
Right.
because you don't want to get sued, but not even that. Sometimes there are stories that I know that are not my stories to tell,
Right.
even though they very much affected Thrill Me and me. And
Right.
I had to find a way to not
You
lie,
you
not
were a
be
supporting
dishonest, but to
cast.
support. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I had to find a way to make sure that the story was conveyed without hurting anyone who was still among the living,
Right.
and make sure that it was an overall positive experience for everybody. And that was difficult to do. Now, I consider myself a professional writer. Like I am a professional writer. It's how I make my money. So like the act of writing wasn't hard. And like I, someone that I know has been working on a fiction book, and it's been taking them a long time. And I said, well, I finished my draft in 6 weeks, and they couldn't believe, how could you write the draft in 6 weeks? I said, well, I know how it ends.
Right.
I know the story. I'm not making it up.
Right.
It's like I know it. So, and I had to dig way back, going back 30 years to reconstruct a lot was difficult.
And were
Like
you
I
ever
said, we didn't
worried
have
about
computers.
Were you ever worried about misremembering? I know that you found some notes and things that you had dated, so that
Hmm.
may have been a help. But were you ever? Because I do that. So in my life, if I'm telling a story, and especially if I'm not the main character, I will make sure that's 100% known. This is my perspective. I only know this side of the story, so only because I want people to understand that there's another side of the story, and they may tell you they may have viewed this in the exact opposite of mine.
I say that. Yeah, I say
Okay.
that very clearly in the book.
Okay.
I say this is mine. This is how I remember it,
Okay.
and other people might remember it differently, or other people might have looked at it a different way than I did. But I'm as honest as I possibly can be, and you know, it it could differ from other people's memory,
Right.
but at the very least, it's close.
Right.
Now once we get into the later 2000s, then I know everything, and I've got a record of it, and I've got emails, and I've got texts, and I've got calendars, and I've got things that I can go back to as reference. But in those the early 90s, it's, did this come first or did that come first?
Right.
If I don't remember, I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to say, well, around this period, these two things were
Right.
happening. You kind of have to do it like that.
I used to base everything based on surgeries. It was like, was that before or after shoulder surgery? Was that before or after knee replacement? So then I can
Right.
narrow down the time frame that way.
Oh my gosh. And then, I'm gonna do another spoiler for the book because
Hold
I hope
on. The
cancel.
book, which is Thrill Maker, the story of my musical Thrill Me by Stephen Dolginoff. Go ahead.
Available on Amazon
Yes.
worldwide,
See, I
whatever
should've
Amazon
finished.
global site you use.
Just like Bobby
So-
says, I never finish.
Yes.
Or maybe that's let her finish.
Oh.
Aw. Okay.
Oh man.
I know.
Well, we're up there. So here's a little tiny taste.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why I had to step away from our version of your podcast.
Okay.
It is in the book. And don't get too excited, but it was a deal with Hollywood for a film version of Thrill Me, in which I was engaged to write a screenplay version of Thrill Me. And that story is recounted in great detail in the book. It was a very exciting time. I don't want to say there's not going to be a movie version of Thrill Me, because there might be someday, but
Right.
this particular deal expired. So this particular deal isn't going to happen. But I had to stop our podcast because I had to write the screen version of Thrill Me. And I think it's the best thing I ever wrote.
The screenplay?
The screen adaptation of Thrill Me.
That's awesome.
It would be a fantastic movie, and it very well might be someday.
Yeah.
But that was
a
very exciting time.
And I feel so bad because, first of all, I say it all the time. I like sitting down, writing notes. If someone says, hey, you're going to talk to Steven this day, I'll go, okay, and I'll get it ready. I can do all that. I don't mind any of that. It's it's a lot of the other stuff that I don't like. I remember one of our early shows, I had to stop us because I forgot to hit record. And so we had gone for like 20 minutes, and then it was hard because they were like, it was such a good talk, and we were trying to recreate it, which you can't really recreate. And so I learned a lot. In fact, it wasn't until I think it was a show or two before you left that we finally got listed on Apple Podcasts, which is where a majority of people listen to their podcast. And that's one reason that we started growing so much. And I mean, not so just because we had more exposure, that's where it was. And I still, let me say this. I was going to mention this earlier when you were talking about swag and merch. If you can afford me any pictures, I will post them to the Instagram. I'll also tag you in the Instagram so people can see what we're talking about, because there's some really cool stuff. I mean, absolutely some of this stuff I'm like, I could play with that. I mean, I could see where that wouldn't just be like, on a shelf somewhere.
I will try to remember to send it to you, but feel free to grab anything from my Facebook.
Okay.
Just grab it, take it. It's yours.
And the last thing I'm going to say, because I know that you lead a very busy life day to day, so I have you for a very limited time. I wanted to go back. You had mentioned earlier that your public face, that you have a public face. And I want to give that public face an identity, because as soon as you said public face, I flashed back to something that I learned about you that I thought was strange at the time. I still think it's interesting, but I have nicknamed you when I'll talk to my wife about you. I'll say Steven, and she goes, which Steven? I'll go Stevie Two-Times. So that's your nickname because you wear two watches.
What is that?
Because you wear two watches. Do. And so that was the easiest, because I remember after we talked about that, because I love watches, but I have never thought about wearing two at the same time. And I remember telling Bobby about that. And so she goes, oh, like he's a two-timer. And I laughed at that. And so then whenever I would talk about, because there's a couple other Stevens I know, she'd go, which Steven? I would go Stevie Two-Times if I was talking about you. So if you want to use that as a name, and it fits great in New York. Hey, my name's Stevie Two-Times.
Well, I love that. Yeah. It sounds like I'm in Goodfellas. But just to be clear, I'm lucky enough to have a lovely Rolex watch, which I think of more as jewelry. Right. And I feel very grateful that I have it.
And that's a family heirloom, correct?
Yes. Yes. And it's essentially, I think of it more as a bracelet.
Right.
And then I'm a big Apple fanboy. And when the Apple Watch came out, I really wanted it as sort of like a wrist computer, a health device.
Right.
And I didn't want to not wear what I think of as a bracelet.
Right.
So I wear one on the right hand and one on the left hand.
So, it's just weird because a lot of times geniuses, people of high IQ get picked on because like if someone goes, to me, represent 13, I will give you every single way. Oh, okay, 13, 12 plus 1, 11 plus 2. I'll write it down. All these different ways to do it. I love watches. I'm like you. I mean, they're a timepiece for me, but I'm not a smartwatch person. So I just had never thought about wearing two watches, but I totally get it. So one of the things that I had said I wanted to do for my wife sometime is she likes smartwatches, so she wouldn't get the use out of a Rolex, but I was gonna
Hmm.
get like the what is it, perpetual oyster band, which is on like the Submariner,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
get that, and then instead of the watch being there, just get the bracelet, and then put something that was like about how I love. So it'd be a watchless Rolex, is what I was gonna call it, and just use the bracelet and have
Yeah.
something connected
Oh, like yeah,
so that
like a gem of something. Yeah, I
yeah,
like
so
that.
and that way it's different because I totally get it. I love wearing watches. Like
Hmm.
I don't have a Rolex. I had the Tag Heuer, the Aqua Racer, which is very
Hmm.
similar to the
Hmm.
Submariner, and I love that
Right.
style. I love that look, and so I do always think of it more as jewelry because if I'm
Right.
wearing something else, a ring, a bracelet, a necklace, then my watch is definitely involved in that. So
Right.
it just caught me when you first said that. I was like, two watches, and then it became where that was your identifying when I was talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, hey, next week I have or in a few days I'm interviewing Stevie Two-Times. That's how I said it. And she's like, oh, that's great. So you can do that. It's great. Goodfellas, whatever going on. I think
Yeah.
it's a great New York City. Okay, one last thing. I know I just hit the 1 hour
Sure.
mark. So I am going to be in New York
It's
City.
we can go a little past the 1 hour
Okay.
mark. It's okay.
Okay, so the last thing I was going to say to you, I am going to be in New York City in April. And
Great.
I will be there for 4 days. There is a screening of, oh, shoot, hold on. There's something I'm going to be there doing and something we'll talk about it at some point. Whoopsie daisy. So anyway, there's going to be something that I will be there for 4 days. I don't know if you're available. And if you're not, I totally get that. And I'm not trying to put pressure for you by having the audience listen in on this too. But
Hmm. Yeah.
but I did
Hmm.
want to ask about this. So when I first talked to you before the very first time I interviewed, I said I don't think I've ever seen a play because I've seen musicals, and for some reason,
Right.
in my
Right.
mind, there was a disconnect between a play that
Hmm.
involved less musical and more story than that. So
Hmm.
I had said, and then you're the one like, hey, dumb shit, you literally have seen a play. And Grease is my wife's favorite play of all time, which I don't know if that was a
Well,
play or a
yeah.
movie for. But so if I come to New York, because I thought we'll be there with Bobby. I'll be there with Bobby. We may be there with our youngest Trinity as well. But we were thinking about trying to catch something. So I would first utilize you to say, hey, what should we look at? Would there ever be a benefit, not saying that you would be available, of me seeing a play or a person seeing a play with someone like you that's been in the industry? Like,
Sure.
would you be able to say, oh, you should watch this part of the stage or this because of just like a normal, someone that doesn't know anything about theater sitting there wouldn't
Right.
know what to focus on?
Well, first off, I am hopeful to go to the theater with you when you're
That
in
would be
town, or at least
awesome.
see you when you're in town. But if it weren't to work out, I hope you all go because we can't talk during the show, so I can't
Right.
point out and go look at this, look at this. There are so many shows. It's it's not intimidating at all. It's like watching a movie. I
Okay.
mean, it's not like it's like watching TV. You're just like watching. It's just the people are actually there, and you're not going to get close-ups, right?
Right.
So, like, there is a musical version of Back to the Future. You remember that
Yeah.
movie? There's a flying car in the show. You'd probably really enjoy that.
Right.
There's all kinds of shows. I think you would definitely get a benefit. I think anyone listening to this podcast should go to the theater because you're seeing a story just like if you watch stories on YouTube, on TikTok,
Right.
on in a theater, it's no different. It's a story.
Right.
It's just that you're experiencing it live, and that performance only happens once.
Right.
They do it again the next night, but yours is special. So yeah, so oh, trust me, I'm going to make sure you do it something. Don't
Yeah.
you worry.
I mean, and that's that. I would love to because I get immersed because that is not me. I have
Hmm.
found that, um, And there's a comedian from New York City, Sean Wickens, who's been on, and we've talked about comedy. I've tried to do stand up a couple times. I've done open mic night, and it's just not for
Hmm.
me. I'm not, as evidence from my shows, I am not a scripted person. I'm not good at. I can write down questions and follow up questions stuff, but I
Right.
can't write down. I'm not good at like that type of storytelling. I'm really good at like improv and stuff. So
Hmm.
when I watch actors on the stage and what they're doing and memorize it, because that was one thing that I had trouble when we were in high school, because like you said, there weren't computers and things like that. Word
Right.
processors were barely available. Well, I would write
Right.
something. Well, I may need to go back and revise something in a paragraph, but I would revise the entire page because I would be like, I can make this better. And so that was
Hmm.
it was almost like paralysis through analysis. I was like analyzing so much so bad. And so I couldn't I didn't know what I was doing. And I want to be able to go to a theater and go, oh, I should watch this. I should focus on this, and not just about the particular play, but maybe that there's
Hmm.
something just being at the theater that a normal person wouldn't be aware of. Because I don't want to get
Hmm.
tunnel vision. I remember when
Right. Right.
our oldest was a dancer in high school, I used to miss out on a lot of their performances because I had focused on what she was doing. I would just watch her instead of watching the whole group. So I really missed out on I thought I was watching the performance, but I was watching my daughter perform, not the group perform. So I was even
Right.
watching.
Right.
So I was watching it incorrectly, and I know that sounds stupid for someone with a high IQ, but that does. I want to make sure that when I watch it, that I get the enjoyment out of it. And I think, like you say, there's so many different things. I mean, Back to the Future. I mean,
Hmm.
there should be something for others out there like me that haven't really sought out the play. I live in the Midwest. I know stuff
Right.
travels through here. A lot of times when it
Sure.
does, it gets sold out really quickly, but
Right.
before the back and forth before we decide. So um,
Right.
I think I would be able to find something, and I would encourage everyone to find something that interests them. And then you can go to the theater, and then you can make a determination whether, oh, you can't
Right.
determine whether you like the theater or not if you've never been to the theater.
Exactly.
So, okay. Well, I hope to see you. Man, I am. Let's see. I'm going to do it one more time. Thrill Maker, the story of my musical Thrill Me by Stephen Dolginoff, available on Amazon and other places you can buy books. Is that correct? Did I finally get it? An hour in, did I finally get all
You
that
got
correct?
it. You
Yes.
got it. It's perfect. You
Okay.
got it.
Okay. Anything you would like to say to the audience before anything you would like to pimp, any social media, anything that you'd like to say to the audience before we leave?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram, Stephen Dolginoff. You can find me on Twitter, S Dolginoff, and I am always posting things about Thrill Me, Thrill Maker, and my other shows. And the most important thing is Thrill Maker, the book, as Rose said, it is a story of believing in yourself, persevering, and finding success. And even if you have never heard of the musical Thrill Me, even if you have no interest in theater, it's about how to succeed
Right.
and how to never stop and how to believe in yourself and how to take charge of your own life. So
And that's what
I
the
think anyone can find something about it
yeah,
to
and
find
not only
interesting.
is that what the book is about, but then like you said,
Hmm.
the mere fact of you writing the book help you push through some things and open up and get to
Yes,
some places that you
totally.
weren't comfortable. And those aren't necessarily always identified. I mean, someone may be
Right,
writing it and may not understand the way that it's on paper. They may not understand
right.
how raw emotion that made you feel. So
Hmm.
they may not have that understanding. So that is amazing. So, and as we spoke earlier, if you have a kind word to say to someone else, go out of your way to say it. Even if you look like a fool going out of your way to say it. I've done that. I really appreciate people that still dress nice. So I'll go out of my way if someone's wearing a suit. I'll go up and say, "Hey, nice suit," because I want them to know that they've been seeing that it's appreciated. So make sure that you have something nice to say. Because Steven, you said something nice to me like 400 episodes ago, and
Right.
thank you. I mean, it actually may right now. I'm literally emotional right now just talking about this because you did make such an impact. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, everyone else, we have had it was all these titles now. Award-winning playwright, now best-selling, categories don't matter, best-selling author on Amazon. And the book is Thrillmaker, The Story of My Musical Thrill Me by Stephen Dolginoff. Stephen, thank you so much. Hold on. Stevie Two-Times, thanks for being on the program.
My pleasure, Ro. Hope to see you again soon.
Okay. Everyone else, thank you all for listening to the podcast. My name's Ro. I'll talk to y'all soon.